Hey guys, and welcome back to Astro Music and Tutorials. I have something to confess. I hurt my back a couple of days ago. I'm not going to get in too deep to that, but long story short, I am unable to turn my head properly without immense pain. And that was really blocking my creative juices, because I need to be able to turn my neck to make music. Don't ask me how, that's how it is. But I did not want to make a video, so I remembered that a couple of you guys had asked, how do I arrange my songs? So I thought I'd make a little tutorial about that. I'll make a basic lo-fi song, as basic as it gets, with the most basic chord progression and melodies and drums. But it'll give you a good idea on how I started to do things. This is essentially how I started, and I still follow the same basic pattern. Basic formula when it comes to arranging my songs. So let's get into the video. Before that, make sure to like this video and subscribe if you haven't. We bring you lo-fi tutorial videos every week. We stay true to our lo-fi nature considering how terrible the video quality is, but I assure you the lo-fi quality is amazing. Now let's get into the video. Okay. So like I said, I had a hard time getting my creative juices flowing with my pain and whatnot. So I made a chord progression behind the scenes. Yeah, this is what it sounds like. What I like to do is, instead of just a 4-bar chord progression, I go for an 8. Rare cases 16, but then usually it's just an 8. What I do is I make the 4-bar chord progression. This one's pretty basic, and I copy it over to the next 4 bars. Now, to add a little variation, I change up the notes in the second part of the chord progression on this side, and that adds a little variation to it. Because lo-fi can get repetitive, and the last thing you need is to bore your listeners with your repetitive chords. So change it up, not too much, but just enough to notice a slight difference. And I'm going to do that right now.
A few minutes later.
Okay, here. I made a few changes to make some variation happen. Now we'll show you the entire chord progression. A and B. I'm sure you guys noticed a difference. Make an 8-bar chord progression and throw in variations every now and then. Each 2-bar pattern should be different. None of them should be the same. And yeah, I guess we'll start with the beat drop. We'll leave the intro for the end because that's what I usually do. So once the intro plays out, transitions into the beat drop and the drums come in, this is where it's going to start. 16 bars. 16 bars is the first verse, I guess. Move on to the drum progression now.
More moments later.
I made a pretty basic drum progression. It has a kick, a snare, and a hi-hat. I'm not going to spice it up any more than that. I just want to show you guys an idea of what I do. This is what it sounds like. That's what 4 bars sound like. And it's going to repeat for 8 bars. And during those 8 bars, we're going to be adding pads to make it more ambient and just ear candy stuff like that. Just letting you know this isn't the only thing that I add during the verse. I'm just showing you a basic idea of what I do. And anyway, once those 8 bars get over, to spice up the variation a bit, what I do usually, I take off the kick and the hats of the beginning of the 9th bar, which is the second time the chord progression starts over, because it's going to start repeating itself and it might become a little bit repetitive. And unless you have some good melodies going along with the piano, this is what you should do. So this is what it's going to sound like. Let's start from this. And you can change up the drums and the hats right here so the transition hits a bit harder. You can make a better drum fill. Anyway, yeah, that repeats on its own for another 8 bars. And that's the end of the first verse. I'll add a few more elements to make the sound a little bit better so you guys don't think that I'm just all talk and no show. I'll spice it up. Hang on a minute.
A few minutes later.
Okay. Back magically, and as you can see, there's a lot of changes that I've made. I've added a couple more elements to spice it up, just to show you guys a snippet of what I do, I guess. So let's listen to it now. Okay, I just realized that I could have repeated that lead one more time, but then, yeah. So this is it. This is what the first verse would look like. You saw how many variations there were. I don't think you got bored because I just kept adding something new and taking it away. As you can see, what's new would be after the first 8 bars, I added this little pad, this little. So along with the new piano progression, it has this 2 things that are new. And at the end of that, at the beginning of the 9th bar, I added this lead. This lead starts off when the kick and the hats are taken away. So when it comes back in, when the beat comes back in, it has a really good impact. I love doing that. It sounds like this. Yeah, lead repeats again. This pad can also be removed. It doesn't have to be there. You don't want to have too many variations and too many melodies coming in. It's just gonna... The listener won't know what to focus on exactly, and it's going to be a jumble of a song. So make sure you look out for that. So I think I need to take that pad away. I'll leave the pad here for now. By the end of this, how much? 15 seconds plus the intro, a minute would have passed. And how long are lo-fi tracks usually? 2.5 minutes is usually the max, I would say. So after this section gets over is the bridge. Now the bridge, there are 2 ways you can go on it. You can reuse the same chord progression that you've been using. Or now would be the section to interject a new chord progression that's kind of similar to your main chord progression, but then melodically different. Same but different. I don't know. It means something. But yeah, for now, I'm just going to be using the same chord progression because I didn't make anything else. And I'll show you what I do.
More moments later.
So now we have the bridge. But this is what I do. Cut off all the other elements except for the piano and the first pad. This pad. Just to give the piano progression a little more depth. I don't want it to be too empty. And once the first 4 bars of the piano progression gets over and the second part with the variation begins, I add the snare. And that second pad, the transition pad that we added in the beginning, along with a new lead. This is the part I used to introduce a new lead or a new counter lead that's going to be playing in the second verse section of the song post the bridge. It's usually flutes for me because I love using flutes. This is how it sounds like. right after that, we bring all the other elements in. It's going to be almost a repeat of this, the same first progression. I'll show you. Put all that back in. Add a crash right there. But the difference is going to be this new flute counter melody, I guess, is going to be playing alongside it. And that is just going to make all the difference in the world. Now, just remember, this is the basic arrangement. There's still a lot more stuff you can do, but this is how you should initially begin if you have no idea where to go with your music, with your arrangement. So I'll just play that little section. I'll show you from the bridge. See what I did there? Just by adding the flute pattern on its own, it just makes a huge difference. And just for this section where we take away the drums and the first lead begins, I take out the flute. Just for another type of variation. Just remember, variation isn't just about adding things, it's also about taking things away so you can bring them back later, and that's what I did. I took the flutes away for the first 4 bars. Then after that, I brought the flutes back in. So it goes with the first lead. And that's essentially how you make the second verse or post-bridge section. And finally, we move on. Well, not finally. We still have the intro. But then afterwards, we move on to the outro. And how I make the outro is... Here's the outro section. I'll play it from right before the song ends. That's how you make the outro. Piano progression repeats along with the pad. It's like the opposite of the bridge. Instead of adding the snares in the second part, I add the snares in the first part. And once that first 4 bars get over, I take away the snare and these pads and these flutes so that it's just the piano and the second pads after that. And it just, this pad helps because once the song gets over, the tail of the pad is really nice. So the reverb just fades off like this. I think that's a good outro. Anyway, now finally, that was when I work on my intro. Now you want your intro to be short and sweet. If you take too long, people are going to be uninterested. That's how things go nowadays. So I suggest you take your chord progression, take the whole thing, copy it, paste it in another pattern, a new pattern. Press Control up and it raises it up an octave. That's what you need. That's what I use for my intros. I'm going to take this lead and the flute progression. Another thing to do is take a very light snare. And that's what you should use during the intro. So yeah, this is what I would do for the intro. Wait, not just that. I like taking the pad, a pad that I make like this transition pad as I call it. Just take bits and pieces of it and put it where it transitions. This is what the intro would sound like. But yeah, by the end of it, 2 minutes and 53 seconds, which is more than enough of a song. This is usually how long my songs are, and it's because I arrange them like this. I may do something differently every now and then, but this is basically how I start all my songs. If you're having trouble with your arrangements, I highly suggest you follow the same formula. It's gonna do wonders for your music. So yeah, I hope you guys learned something. This is, like I said before, this is just a basic idea of an arrangement. If you enjoy this, I'll make a slightly more advanced arrangement that I use in a future video. Like and comment anything if you have any doubts, or if you just like the video and my arrangement process in general. Subscribe if you haven't, it will help us out a lot, and see you in the next video.